All right, so we'll get going as it's 4 o'clock. Welcome to everyone who's joining, and thank you. This is the EcoSchools Going for Platinum coaching session. So this session has been designed for schools that are hoping to submit their applications at Platinum this year. And we'll just get going. And before we get started, I'm just going to take a few moments to give a land acknowledgement. I'll read our organizational land acknowledgement, and then I'll give a few words about where I'm joining from today. And I also invite you to write the territory that you are joining from in the chat, as well as any other words of acknowledgement. EcoSchools is a national organization aiming to support, amplify, and celebrate diverse communities across Turtle Island. To deepen and reconcile our relationships with these communities, we're currently working on acknowledging the many ways of knowing and integrating Indigenous perspectives into our programming and communication. We are committed to continually develop our personal and organizational role and responsibilities to better connect with the land, water, air, plants, and animals around us, and learn how we can engage, support, honor, and celebrate diverse cultures, voices, perspectives, and communities across Turtle Island. And as a part of a growing network of schools and partners, we will continue to encourage this reflection, growth, and practice with the communities we serve. And for myself, I am a settler on Turtle Island, and I'm joining from Nagojwanong, also known as Peterborough, Ontario. This is a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwa, Odawa, Potawatomi, Chippewa, Mississauga, Algonquin, and Delaware communities. This land is located on Treaty 20, and I am grateful for the stewardship and the stewardship that's taken place on this land since time immemorial by the original peoples of this land, and continues to take place to this day despite the detrimental impacts of colonialism. And here's our agenda, but just before we get into that, I'll introduce myself and my co-host today, Erin. So I'm Clara Luke, I'm the program manager with EcoSchools Canada. And Erin, if you wanna jump in and briefly introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Erin and I'm the Programs and Data Assistant here at EcoSchools.
Thanks, Erin. So this is our agenda for this afternoon. Depending where you're joining from, it may not be the afternoon. So after our little welcome, we're just going to do a quick Zoom poll, a bit of an icebreaker just to get to know who's here in the Zoom room today. And then we'll follow that with a demo of our platform of the ECA. Just a few reminders for you about managing your plan and then submitting your plan, followed by some tips for success, just general tips when completing your application. And then we'll get into some best practices and inspiration from schools that we have seen in the past. And this whole presentation isn't intended to be too long, just 20 to 30 minutes or so that we can provide lots of room for your questions at the end. Okay, so for the Zoom poll, I am just going to pass it over to Erin to launch the poll if you're able to do that, and then speak to some of the results. And we'll just give you a few moments. Yeah.
So for who's in the room, we have 6 elementary teachers so far, 2 secondary teachers, 1 principal. There's still many answers coming in though. And then in terms of what is your experience with EcoSchools, we have 33% that are new, but their school has certified in the past, and 23% where it's their school's first year in the program. 18% at 1 to 3 years, and also 18 at 4 to 6 years. Yeah, now that who's in the room has gone up to 56% are elementary teachers. That's 14 out of the 25 respondents, 12% for secondary. It looks like pretty much everyone has answered, so I'll just leave it open for a few more seconds before I end it. Great. And I'll share those results just in case you want to see for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. And thanks for participating, everyone. Looks like we've got a nice diversity of folks joining today. So we're happy to have you here. So to move on, we're just going to get right into our little demo of the ECA. So just give me a moment while I switch screens over to the platform. Okay, so everyone should, I think, now be seeing the ECA on the screen, the EcoSchools certification application. So what you see here is hopefully something you're all very familiar with by this point. This is your plan page. And I'm just going to go over a few little pieces and reminders and just demonstrate a few actions for you here. So the first thing is the plan progress bar. So this is where you can just take a quick look at where your plan is currently at. So in this demo, for this demo school, their current level that they would submit at, if these were all the actions that they were going to undertake, is bronze. However, you'll see that there's an eligible for over here, which says eligible for platinum. And that just means that this particular school has added enough actions to their plan so that if they ended up doing all of those actions and doing them to the full extent, you know, claiming full points, then they would be submitting at platinum. But the more kind of relevant level for you is generally the current level, because that tells you how many points you've currently collected. And then I guess just one other note that anything below bronze is recognized as a participant. So not a formal certification, but we do want to recognize the work that schools do if they're not able to get to that bronze level this year. So what I'll do now is just take you through quickly how to add or search for and add an action to your plan. If you know you've been hard at work doing these actions on the ground, but actually haven't gotten into the application yet, just a quick refresher. So in the search field, you can search for an action name. So for example, I'll put paper in there if I want to do a paper consumption action. So the action that comes up is our goose paper action, which is good on one side paper, all about responsible paper use. So to add that to my plan, all I have to do is click that little plus button. You'll see that it disappears from the library. And then if I navigate back over to our plan and scroll down, it should now be in here. So you'll see that's here. We haven't started it yet. So I'll go into that action and just kind of show you how easy it is to fill out and review some of the different components of an action. We have the about section, the curriculum area, which provides just some notes for inspiration in terms of how you would connect to the curriculum. The SDGs provides one or more of the most related sustainable development goals. And then EcoSchools in Action provides some photo examples of how other schools have carried out the action in the past. The action guide is a guidelines for how to undertake the action at your school, recognizing that schools carry out actions in many different ways. So there's some built-in flexibility there. And the resources section is a collection of the resources that you might use to support the action. So in this case, we have just this goose paper tracking sheet as an example. So this is where you can use this sheet to keep track of all the goose paper bins that your school has, and the ones that have been created this year. And down to the certification questions. The start date is the first field, and that is a mandatory field. And I'll just show you how to fill out a few of these other ones. So the next question asks who is engaged in the action, how many students were involved, how many staff members. So you can easily just input those numbers there. There's a series of questions asking things about opportunities for student leadership, the communication strategies that were used, if the broader community was engaged at all in this action. And just a general note here, you're not expected to answer every question, just answer the questions that apply to how your school has carried out the action. In addition to the start date, the only other mandatory action is the action description down here at the bottom, because that just gives you a chance to provide a little additional information about how that action took place at your school. And maybe you feel like the other fields have given you enough space to describe that, which is fine. And in which case this just has to be a brief description of what took place. And then the action documentation section is where you can actually add uploads. So those could be photos or, for example, a filled out worksheet, such as that one that I showed you. And for schools that are aiming for platinum, this is something we encourage. This isn't currently a mandatory requirement, but we do really encourage that for schools aiming for platinum to add at least one piece of documentation. And I believe there's 3, you can attach up to 3 files there. And a couple other things to point out at the bottom. If you are going to come back later and continue filling out the action, there's that come back later button. And when you have done all that you can, just click that done button. Currently, it can't be clicked because one of the mandatory fields hasn't been filled out, but now you can see that I could click done there. So for now, I'll just click come back later for that action. And I think those were the main things I wanted to, one other thing I'll just remind folks about is that submit button. So that is coming up soon. April 29th is our early bird deadline. May 13th is our final deadline. And a few things just to keep in mind before you're submitting your application. In order to submit, what you need to do is make sure that all of the actions that you intend to do, that you have filled out all the questions as they reflect the action at your school. Click that done button, that's important. And if there are actions that you added to your plan, but you didn't get a chance to do this year, all you need to do is simply choose one that hasn't been started yet, simply delete it from your plan using this X button. So there's a little confirmation that comes up just to make sure that you intended to do that, and then simply delete it from your plan. So all of those actions that you didn't get to, those need to be removed from your plan before you can press submit. And once you've done that, that submit button will turn green, and then you'll be able to submit your plan. And I will now just switch back to the presentation. All right. So next are just some general tips for success, things to keep in mind when you are completing your application. So we'll move ahead with these. The first is claim actions from the current year only. So actions, projects, and campaigns your school reports on should take place in the current school year, generally September to June for most schools. We are an annual certification program, so we assess the environmental action and learning schools have undertaken in the current year. And if there are actions that are established at your school. Maybe you have a garden that gets maintained year after year. Just make sure that you're reporting on the work that was done. There would have had to be an active maintenance during the year in order to claim that action. And student engagement as well is an important piece of that. And if there is work that's taking place after the submission deadline of May 13th, you can report on what's being planned. So an example of this might be, again, some outdoor activities like gardening work that you're getting started or continuing to work on into June. So just document what you have planned and what will be taking place. And if possible, upload a planning document just to kind of show the work that is underway. And next, avoiding duplication. So it's just important to make sure that you're not claiming the same action twice. And what I mean by this is, if there's an overlap in certain activities that your school has done this year, for example, if you participated in the Great Gulp and also connected that to learning about single-use plastics, you wouldn't want to claim that same learning within the reduce single-use plastics action. That might need to be an additional reduce single-use plastics campaign, since the Great Gulp does focus on single-use plastics in terms of water bottles. And if you do have more questions about examples of this or what exactly I mean there, please ask them in the question period. And adapt the action for your school. So actions will really be most successful if you adapt them for the unique circumstances of your school. And so the guidance and resources that we have provided on the ECA in terms of that action guidance, as well as those resources, just use the ones that work for you. And if you don't feel, as I mentioned, that you have to fill out every single, question on each action. All right, so we're now going to talk about what to expect when you're aiming for platinum, as well as some best practices and ideas for inspiration. And of course, recognizing that COVID-19 continues to be a reality for schools across Canada. And we, this year, have continued to make those adjustments to help ensure that certification is possible through COVID. Through various means, so virtual learning, hybrid learning, and of course, encouraging in-school safety measures. Some measures we have taken include providing COVID-19 messages in each action with links to further tips and information for how to adapt actions to COVID. And these include, adapting to the health and safety guidelines that apply to your jurisdiction or region. And we've also developed a certification process for virtual schools. Some additional program suggestions that we're sharing with the community include using this time to get outdoors and using the schoolyard as a place for exploration and learning, or a space to bring each class to teach any lesson. And we're encouraging teachers to bring EcoSchools actions into the classroom for a class lesson. We've provided curriculum linked lesson suggestions in each action. And the way that the platform is designed, it's really easier than ever for a class to take on one action or a group of actions, and then another class could take on other actions. You can also invite participation from many staff and students throughout the school, so you have more of a collaborative effort on the platform. You can have multiple accounts. You just want to make sure that you're communicating amongst each other outside of the platform so you all know what you're working on. All right, so what is a Platinum School? So there are lots of best practices and things that we see that kind of represent what a Platinum School means, but in the very simplest terms, a Platinum School is an EcoSchool that certifies with 101 or more points. And this is an important piece that we wanted to share with you all. So some reminders about the deadlines as well as the Platinum assessment process this year. So first, as I mentioned, the early bird deadline and the Platinum deadline are April 29th and May 13th. These are the same deadlines for all schools, but schools that submit at Platinum do have an extra requirement, which is a virtual school visit. However, schools that submit at Platinum this year and did not certify last year, so they're required to have a virtual visit to certify at Platinum. But those that did certify at Platinum last year, you won't, if you're on the call today, you won't be required to have a visit this year because we do those virtual visits every other year. If your application is currently eligible for Platinum, you should have heard from us already, just asking you to confirm your intentions about pursuing Platinum this year, just so we can start scheduling those visits sooner rather than later. And yeah, we will be confirming those details, including the date and time of your visit later this month. So please do your best to make that date, and we will do our best to accommodate if it really doesn't work for your school. And if you choose not to pursue Platinum this year, please let us know, just so we don't reach out to you to schedule your virtual visit. And the virtual visit is an opportunity for us to check in with you about your experience in the program this year and clarify any questions about your application. And you're welcome to join the visit with your eco team or class. Students are very welcome to attend. However, you don't have to be physically at the school during your virtual visit if that is not possible. So at this point, I'm just going to pass it over to Erin to go through some best practices for Platinum schools.
Thank you, Clara. So in these following slides, I'm going to take you through some examples of best practices and inspiration for schools that are aiming for Platinum certification. So first off, our first best practice is to establish clear roles and responsibilities for those at your school who are planning and carrying out EcoSchools actions. So in the Getting Started action, you'll have the opportunity to tell us about who is on your eco team and how often you meet. And then in the action documentation section that Clara was highlighting earlier, you can add and upload photos such as the sign-up sheet you see here on the screen on the right. And this sheet here demonstrates the different roles on an eco team. And then in the photo on the left, you might notice how everyone is in this photo. And so this photo is from our archives. But it does serve as a reminder that meeting online is a great way to accommodate meetings if COVID restrictions mean you can't meet in person, or also to accommodate students and staff from different cohorts. So having representation from different grades and a variety of staff members will make your team even stronger. Some examples of eco team structures include a class or a grade eco rep, or you could think about having subcommittees such as a fundraising or gardening committee, or you can have defined roles such as secretary or treasurer. Next up, offering students across all grades and subject areas provides a chance to learn in, about, for, and from the environment. And this will create an engaged student citizenry who are informed about environmental issues and motivated to make a change. Collaboration among staff can expand teachers' ideas and approaches to bolster student environmental literacy and strengthen your EcoSchools program. So we believe that environmental literacy should provide all students with the opportunity to learn in the environment. So this means solidifying students' sense of place and social emotional connections to the environment by getting outside. About the environment, so this means engaging students and learning about different environmental topics and socio-ecological systems through a critical lens. For the environment, so to turn learning into action with the aim of making the world a more sustainable and equitable place. And lastly, from the environment. So this is ensuring that students develop a deeper and more reciprocal connection to the environment. So you can find additional guidance on this in the environmental literacy action. And in addition to getting started, this is the other locked action. So these are both mandatory actions because we believe they'll help your school form and maintain a strong foundation for environmental learning and action. And at the platinum level, they also represent a challenge to go even deeper. So you can grow the impact of your Eco Teams initiatives by promoting and communicating your work, especially when it goes beyond your school and into the broader community. So in most actions in the certification questions, you'll see the question of what communication strategies did students use to effectively communicate your action to the school community, and also a question about how is the broader community involved in this action. So this is where you can let us know how you got the word out and who was involved in your initiatives. So examples of this could include community newspaper articles about your environmental initiatives, or a school board or district media release about your EcoSchools program, an environmentally themed open house where community members are invited, or even regular updates via a publicly viewable social media account such as Twitter, or Facebook or Instagram. So I just want to continue focusing in on this broader school community involvement for the moment, because we do believe it's a very impactful component of a strong eco school. So for example, if students organize a conference with a neighboring school and invite parents and community members, this could be claimed under the environmental fair or the environmental conference action. And at the platinum level, we know that schools are doing great things. So we want to encourage schools to collaborate with other schools or organizations to spread knowledge and build support for the campaigns that your school is undertaking. Now, investigating change over time. So we have actions such as switch off lights and devices, heating and cooling, and sort your waste. And all of these include tracking sheets. And this allows your schools to monitor behavior change throughout the school year. So if you track it multiple times over the course of the year, students can see the impact of their awareness campaigns and consider why or why not behaviors have changed. So on the screen here, you'll see an interpretation of a tracking sheet. And since this one is on a community bulletin board, this also creates more awareness throughout the school. And you can include photos of your tracking sheets or other means of tracking in the action documentation section on the ECA. And then at schools where it may not be advised or safe for students to travel from room to room to track, so for example, like lights or monitors, you can do this action at the classroom level, or you can have multiple classes do the activity and then one class responsible for compiling the results. So the data that your school reports in your application is not only used to assess whether you properly compiled an action, but it's also used by us at EcoSchools, and it helps us track the environmental impact in schools across Canada and also create a baseline for year-over-year comparisons so you can track your school's progress. For this reason, we ask that you try your very best to accurately report the data in your application. So actions such as school energy footprint and school water footprint, these include certification questions that ask for school building metrics that may not be available on hand for most members of an eco team. So we recommend consulting with your school's caretaker, principal, or board or district office for this information. And to help you get started, you can find data collection sheets in the Action Resources tab of these actions. And these will help keep you on track. So on the screen here, you can see an example of the school energy footprint resource. But also if you get stuck or you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at programs@ecoschools.ca. Now, the most successful EcoSchools programs are ones that value and encourage student leadership. So even at the elementary level, there's lots of ways to provide opportunities for students to take the lead in areas such as planning, promotion, and regular maintenance of actions. So one model that we've seen is for younger students and older students to pair up as eco buddies, and then they can share environmental tips and practices. By letting students take the lead, they can gain a variety of skills from researching an environmental topic, to organizing ways to raise awareness, to engaging the school community and learning and action. And while strong curriculum connections have always been a marker of Platinum EcoSchools, With COVID, the ability to run the EcoSchools program in the classroom and through cohorted learning has become more important than ever. So as Claire was showing in the demo, in each action, you will find ideas for curriculum connections in that tab there. And in the action descriptions section, you can also provide more details about how you connected the action to in-class lessons, or you can also attach examples to the action documentation section. So here on the screen, this is an example of how students learned about the abundance of biodiversity on their school grounds. And our new Greenbelt Biodiversity Action supports this learning and also provides a template for conducting a plant inventory on your school grounds. So another best practice that we see at Platinum schools is established actions and campaigns. So those are ones that are embedded into the regular practice and culture of a school. So for example, for our active and sustainable school travel action, we would see maybe not just one walk or roll to school day, but rather weekly events such as Walking Wednesdays or Sustainable Transit Tuesdays. Or this might also mean establishing practices each year. So for the goose paper action, you could have goose paper boxes in each classroom of your school, and these would be used regularly throughout the year. And then the final best practice I want to touch on today is whole school engagement. And while we acknowledge that this has become more challenging with COVID, there are still lots of creative ways to spread awareness and offer engagement opportunities to the whole school. So this could be through pledges, so having each class take the lead on a different action, or in this example, getting together online to do the Great Gulp all together. And again, just always make sure there are clear connections to deeper learning and engagement when you're planning these awareness raising challenges. So for example, with this Great Gulp action, you can also tie this into awareness about access to safe and healthy tap water in Canada and the importance of reducing single-use plastic waste. And now I'll hand it back to Claire to go over some upcoming opportunities.
Thank you, Erin. And I'll go over these quickly. I know we've gone a little over that 30 minutes we mentioned. So just wanted to share with you some upcoming opportunities for your schools to win prizes or while engaging in environmental learning and action. So the first one we wanted to mention is Project 2050. So this provides an easy and fun way for youth and their families to contribute to the fight against climate change by adopting small but impactful climate-friendly habits. And for this action, you just need to select and complete at least 3 Project 2050 actions on the ECA, and your school will earn a Project 2050 badge. And Erin's going to be putting the links to these different opportunities in the chat, just so you can check them out later if you haven't already heard about them. The next is National Goose Paper Day, actually coming up very soon, the first Thursday in April. And we're going to be celebrating responsible paper use by encouraging you to share some of your creative goose bin creations. So do that through our social media contest, and you could win a great prize. And then last, we are really excited to announce that we'll be hosting a virtual presentation called From Awareness to Action with Severn Cullis-Suzuki from the David Suzuki Foundation on April 21st to celebrate Earth Day. And if you would like to get a link to that event, all you need to do is add the community cleanup action to your plan with the date of when and some details about when you're going to run the community cleanup at your school, or if you've already run it, please make sure you have that action in your plan, and then you'll get the link to join that event if you do that before April 21st.